Good afternoon. My apologies. We'll start in 5. We're just sorting one technical glitch, but we should be ready to go in 5 minutes. Thank you so much. Okay, very good afternoon once again, and thank you so much for the patience. I do apologize for the late start. We'll try to make up for the lost time as we go. Warm welcome to this ECOSOC Hearts 2023 side event on the global food crisis. What are the most impacted people and communities telling us at this extraordinary time? What are the solutions? Excellencies, distinguished panelists, participants, and just to make sure we have everybody, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Thompson Peary. I'm from the World Food Program. I'm a regional spokesperson and I'm based out of Johannesburg. I do have the honor to moderate today's ECOSOC Hearts side event on this. And today's event will truly elevate the voices of those that are affected by the dire food crisis we are facing in 2023. We will hear from NGO partners and the Red Cross and Red Crescent, who are on the front lines providing essential humanitarian assistance to save lives and livelihoods. Now, the broad geographical scope of the first-hand accounts we will hear today will truly underscore just how global this crisis is. I look forward to the productive discussion today, as well as to find people-centered, locally driven solutions, and to hear how decision makers in the room today can help safeguard these solutions through necessary resource allocations and enabling policy environment. Now, we do have a great turnout here in the room, but we also have an even bigger crowd that is joining us online. Warm welcome to colleagues that are joining us online. And for you guys to easily follow where we have speakers that are joining us online, please do use this device so that the acoustics can be great. Also, this is a very dynamic event. It is interwoven with video testimonies from some of the field locations where we work. Unfortunately, for today's event, we do not have interpretation, so it is only in English. And again, I do apologize for any inconveniences. But if there's anything that we can do to make it better for you to follow proceedings, please do let us know. Our team is seated at that corner, and we'll do our best. For those of you who are on social, this is an event as well that is being live streamed and recorded. And if you're active and you really would like to help us spread the word, the hashtag is #FightFoodCrisis, #FightFamine, and ECOSOC-HAS. And if we have time, hopefully we can also get to some of those conversations on social. After the closing statements, we very much welcome brief statements and questions from the floor. We do hope that we can hear statements, but please note, as is the case with some of these events, that time is indeed limited. And a summary of the meeting, however, will be published on the Global Network Against Food Crisis webpage. Now that we got that out of the way, I would like us to get started so that we can really make up for that lost time. And I want to first welcome Ms. Marcia Wong, Deputy Assistant to the Administrator of USAID's Bureau for Humanitarian Assistance, BHA. Ms. Wong, you have the floor. She will give us her welcome remarks. Please let us encourage her as she starts. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all. It's hard to match our chair's energy, but I'm going to try. I think that the comment about limiting your statement was definitely pointed at me, so I will be brief because I am surrounded by richness. But I want to thank, first of all, our co-hosts from Kenya and from Italy, the organizers, WFP, FAO, and the network, and to all of you for joining this session today. This is a timely and critical discussion, and I imagine and I hope everything you hear from here you will take forward in your conversations for the rest of this week. What is the backdrop that we are speaking with them? We are seeing the effects of Russia's war in Ukraine, the complex crises and protracted conflicts around the world, COVID-19 pandemic, don't forget that, and it has its secondary impacts, and of course climate. Climate shocks have pushed the world in a combined way and a compounding way into a global food security crisis. So again, this is this backdrop we are talking about today. And I welcome this panel's energy in highlighting the new ways of thinking and working at all levels, from the international to the local, to address an unacceptable reality. This is a reality where an unprecedented number of people, and I'm looking at the Global Report on Food Crises 2023, which estimated over 250 million people, 250 million people, are struggling with acute food insecurity, while many others hover precariously on the brink. Like many of you, the U.S. in the past years, we could not stand by without taking action. In 2022, the U.S. government provided over $17 billion in humanitarian assistance globally, including $11.8 billion from USAID's Bureau of Humanitarian Assistance. That constituted the vast majority of all donor contributions. U.S. action and with our partners, it was significant in averting the worst famine in the Horn of Africa last year, where we provided $2 billion in humanitarian assistance. We had hoped that our efforts to front load this assistance would meet the urgent needs, which it did, but also would buy some time. It would allow some time for other donors to step in, but that has not been the case with the scale that was needed. We recognize that our response did translate into many, many lives saved and livelihoods protected, but ultimately, in the case of humanitarian assistance, this is not enough. If the Horn of Africa experiences an unprecedented sixth failed rainy season as projected in the coming months, the number of drought-affected people requiring emergency food assistance will be drastically beyond the 30 million in need as of December of 2022. So again, I stress, humanitarian assistance alone cannot resolve food insecurity. In USAID's response to global food insecurity, from Haiti to Burma, from Afghanistan to Yemen, We recognize that it is imperative and it is a must-have. We must
Maybe you
work
can hear
together
it.
across all sectors.
Okay.
This is amongst
Can you hear that?
humanitarian, the
Okay.
development, and peace-building actors to build resilience and reduce the future
So
humanitarian
this is
needs,
the WFP
and to help
FAO
communities build and
Global
own
Food
a
Crisis
prosperous future
session
for themselves.
in
No one
Geneva.
organization has a
Concern
monopoly
is
of
on.
knowledge. No one
Peter has a
organization can
very
provide the
short
resources and the technical
thing.
expertise needed.
But anyway,
So we
it's
must
good
work
to listen
together
to what she's
with
saying.
urgency and agility to expand the circle of collaboration, to include the international financial institutions. Please raise your hand. I'll talk to you later. Private sector and philanthropists. Please raise your hand. I'll talk to you later. Responsibly and where we can. We must include these actors in our work. And importantly, and I stress this in bold font, include the communities themselves. Listen to their voices, create space, and provide them a microphone in identifying the needs and the long-term solutions and as being part of that solution. I am sorry that I am going to have to slip out in a few minutes, but my team will stay here and they'll ask you hard questions and you can expect to ask them hard questions also. But I do wanted to thank you for your attention today. We at USAID remain committed to working with all of you and to be working side by side with you to address this global challenge. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, and thank you as well to the United States for sponsoring this side event. I would now like to keep it moving and to invite the House to take a video that is on the screen. I'm sure we'll have it up on the big screen, and for those that have these little monitors, you should be able to follow. But this is basically a short video by our colleagues from World Vision that is showcasing a testimony from a female beneficiary in Burkina Faso.
Jam ñamdu saɗɗe majjum ne woni kibo hande ɓe naati e gure amen ɓe mbari bawuro amen saabu ɗum min ngara gewɗi koye fayi gotel min garda e tawi min ndemi min taƴa min joppi gese na dari min joppi gewdi na to min ngari kana nde pam o ni wari min keɓa min ñama ko sotte wala ko minen kaƴa kay minen jiɗi wallata min sukaɓe amen ɓe heɓa jangga sabu neɗɗo janggay kay walla foto a woni min keɓɓe mballiri min e toon mballira min e nema komin tigirta ɓe seeɗa seeɗa min e rewɓe ɗo minen yiiɗi golle jungo min keɓa min golla sabu jooɗe a wala golle ɗo ñande fof hokkugol hoya e so heeɓi golle ma na golle ko heɓan buuɗi sabundema en doka jam ɗum fof minen giɗi so jam wala fof gollal wala jam ardata ɗi golle jokka.
Thank you, World Vision, for giving us that voice from Djibo in Burkina Faso. Allow me, by way of housekeeping, just to remind colleagues who are joining us online to stay on mute. Please do stay on mute so that proceedings can be smooth from our end. I also would like to invite you to watch our second video of the afternoon from Ms. Rina Gelani, who is the United Nations Famine Prevention and Response Coordinator. Rina has been traveling to various forums in New York, Brussels, and here in Geneva, as well as across in the field locations, advocating on behalf of those most impacted by the global food crisis. Her insights on how best to serve the most vulnerable and break cycles of food insecurity is of much value to us here in the room. Please take it away.
Dear friends and colleagues, I'm honored to participate in this conversation, and I wish I was there with you in person. You are all working on the front lines, so the issue is not news to you. The crisis we are currently facing is unprecedented in scale and in scope. Since the COVID-19 pandemic, millions of people have been pushed into poverty and destitution. The number of people facing hunger has doubled over the past 5 years alone. Over 250 million people are now acutely food insecure. Conflict, climate, and disasters economic instability are making disasters more frequent and more severe. The good news is that solutions exist. We have proven in the past that we can avert famine and reduce hunger when we act together and when we act early. I'm particularly encouraged to see this panel today. Thank you for putting the spotlight on this essential issue. Clearly, one of the key solutions to the global hunger crisis is to listen to local communities and empower local organizations, women-led organizations in particular. I have been visiting communities on the front line and talking to women leaders from dozens of countries in the past months. Local communities know the solutions to the problems they face better than us. What are they telling us? First, they want to have a seat at the table and a say in decisions that affect their lives. Accountability to affected people has to become more than a slogan, but a mode of operations. Second, local communities want support in building resilience to shocks so that they can build a brighter future for themselves. Humanitarian aid is, by essence, meant to make itself irrelevant. I felt inspired when I visited Niger to see local NGOs claiming that they were able to withstand drought without emergency assistance. Development and humanitarian action must go hand in hand. We must make sure humanitarian aid is systematically coupled with resilience programming. The nexus must leave boardrooms to become a reality on the ground. Then, communities want to be enabled to stay on their land. Over 110 million people are displaced globally, often forced to leave their homes and seek refuge, facing pain and violence on their way. Finally, local organizations want climate justice. They face the harshest consequences of the climate emergencies: record-breaking heat waves, historic flooding, never-ending droughts. Yet, they receive only a tiny fraction of climate funding. The world must deliver on its climate promises. It is time we hear and amplify the voices of local organizations, marginalized communities, and women-led local organizations. It is time we invest in the solutions that align with their priorities. Wishing you all fruitful discussions today.
Thank you so much for those reflections that we have. And previously, I know we had a video from Bukina, and now we had a video from Ms. Gilani. Back to the room now. It is my pleasure to introduce Ms. Veronica Nzioki, humanitarian advisor from the Permanent Mission of Kenya in Geneva, who is going to give us her reflections on the global food crisis. Ma'am, over to you.
Working? Is it working? Okay, super. There you go. Okay, so excellencies are in the room, distinguished participants, ladies and gentlemen. I'm honored to join you this afternoon for this side event, and I thank the FAO office here in Geneva for inviting Kenya to co-sponsor this event. Let me pose a question. When was the last time you went hungry because you could neither afford nor access food? No answer. According to the World Food Programme, one of the co-organizers of this side event, in 2023, more than 345 million people face high levels of food insecurity, more than double the number 3 years ago in 2020. Regrettably, the number of acutely hungry people continues to increase. 70% of the world's hungry people are living in areas afflicted by war and violence, and conflict forces people out of their homes and farms, redirects resources from sectors like agriculture. Conflict also renders previously agricultural viable lands inaccessible, and conflict has also caused toxic contamination of agricultural lands. In addition, according to the 2023 Global Terrorism Index, out of the 830 million people facing food insecurity globally, 58% live in the 20 countries most affected by terrorism. Additionally, many of the countries affected by terrorism are also the most vulnerable in terms of water availability. Extreme and adverse climate change impacts, particularly droughts as well as floods, are putting immense stresses on food production. For us, from the Horn of Africa, we just experienced a very prolonged drought, which pushed the entire region to the brink of famine. Widespread shortages of staple foods have driven food prices beyond the ability of many households to afford them. The drought was immediately also followed by severe floods, further hampering farming, killing livestock, and destroying livelihoods, which in turn undermined people's ability to produce and purchase food. Globally, economic shocks are also reverberating in the agricultural sector, both directly and indirectly, putting enormous pressures on people, communities, and countries. We thank the organizers of this event for the focus on the human face on the global hunger emergency. Beyond the numbers and adverse events are real people with personal experiences, aspirations, but also fears, traumas, and uncertainties. The global food crisis extends beyond food. It is about the erosion of dignity. It is about communities and families sinking into despair when the very basic sustenance for life is either completely unavailable or is fiscally out of reach. It is about children missing educational opportunities. It is about families and communities becoming vulnerable to human trafficking and other negative coping strategies. It is about livelihoods and diminished access to make choices. It is about rising malnutrition. It is about unmet development commitments. It is about social and political upheavals, as we also have heard from the lady from Burkina Faso, that they want there to be peace, because without peace, nothing can work. While humanitarian support is an urgent life-saving imperative to ensure long-term food security and sustainability, it remains crucial to address the root causes of the food crisis and build resilience that ensures societies withstand shocks. In this regard, let me note the following issues. First, strengthening peace efforts, as we've heard from our sister from Burkina Faso, in order to address conflicts that drive and perpetuate food insecurity remains urgent. And that is why, as a country, Kenya remains fully seized and engaged on peace efforts within our continent to ensure that lives are saved from immediate impacts of conflict, but also from the indirect impacts, including food insecurity, among them linked to the disruption of food production and supply. We call for amplified voices of development actors, including your voices, in the quest for peaceful resolution of conflicts as a measure to address food insecurity. Secondly, our climate action remains crucial. It is important to honor climate commitments to ensure that the most vulnerable who bear the brunt of adverse weather events are not further forced to sink into food insecurity, despair, and death. Investments in climate action and smart agriculture are crucial, as well as support to small-scale farmers. Promotion of access to food must also factor in economic access, hence affordability, but also physical access, hence affordability, and then subsequently physical access for availability. In this regard, Kenya has expressed its concern that trade disruptions, escalating prices, and excessive volatility for food and agricultural products are bound to worsen if no immediate intervention is taken, particularly at the multilateral level. We continue calling for unrestricted movement of food from areas of surplus to food-deficient regions, and the exercise of due restraint in the imposition of any trade measures that may harm food security objectives of countries. Sound national policy environments remain crucial to enable the optimal food production and supplies, as well as to cushion the most vulnerable people. Alongside this is policy formulation that incorporates the voices of the different segments of society, including women, children, men, among others. It is also important to address the global hunger crisis through anticipation, early warning, preparation, planning, and responses, as well as through cross-regional or cross-country learning and experience sharing. Shorter-term responses and rapid responses in times of crisis should be made in close coordination with longer-term national processes and priorities. This is key to ensure complementarity as well as sustainability and avoid fragmentation of efforts. As I conclude, let me resound a quote by Martin Luther King on hunger and economic justice. Why should there be hunger and deprivation in any land, any city, at any table, when man or woman, has the resources and the scientific know-how to provide all mankind with the basic necessities of life. There is no deficit in human resources. The deficit is in human will. And this is a challenge to the FAO in your mandate to free humanity from hunger and to mobilize this will as you lead international efforts to defeat hunger. And I thank you all for your attention.
Thank you so much for those remarks. Thank you so much as well to the government of Kenya for co-sponsoring this side event. We now have another video testimony from the Save the Children. Our partners from Save the Children were kind enough to help us showcase a different perspective. This time from a young girl in Somalia whose family had to deal with severe drought in 2019 and is recovering from recurrent climate disasters. Sorry, I'll take that again. And recovering from recurrent climate disasters, unfortunately, remains a reality for many across Eastern Africa today. Take it away.
أنت ربي في عندك أنت حاولت على هاي شباتي بالمعاني هاي أريوالهن أريوها بابسي إمرضو كلول إيو أبار نلقى أنا جمك ساسبل سوكورني أوي حنشتي حنون باكل عشان منتك هاي مكسو قاعدة استبالكي كنتي caafimaad waa ilaa waa ka soo caafimaaday way fiican tahay marka la ciyaarayo waa ka qoslaysiiyaa markastana waa la ciyaaraa waa nin mahad celiya oo ilaashan oo xanuunsan dhakhtarka noo geysan oo noo caafimaadiseen kulliin waa nin mahad celiya
Thank you so much. I would like to thank all our speakers, including Marcia in absentia. We have warmed up the stage. We are now going to turn to our panelists. And I do have an all-female panel and a male moderator, which is great. And help me introduce, and at this point in time, I would like to introduce our panelists. Help me, if you can. We do have a panelist who is joining us from the Kenyan capital, Ms. Mary Njeri, who is World Vision's Global Hunger Response Director. I don't know if we have her up the screen already so that we can welcome her. We also have Mary, just to confirm that you are online. There she is.
Yes, I am here, Firi. I hope you
Excellent.
hear me.
Good afternoon from Geneva. We'll bring you in shortly. Also help me welcome Ms. Sofia Burtak, who is from Ukraine Rural Women's Business Network, who is joining us here in the room. She is to my right. We also have Ms. Nadine Saba, co-founder of the ACA Network for Development in Lebanon. Welcome, ma'am. And unfortunately, I have to excuse Ms. Yuve Guluma from IFRC, who has just had an emergency and had to leave. However, we are going to start very shortly. And how we'll go about it is that I will ask each of the panelists a specific question, and then they respond. And then if we have time at the end, I'll also get to be able to take questions from the floor or to take statements from the floor so that it is more interactive. Now, I would like to go to Nairobi first and bring in Miss Mary Njeri. Mary, you are leading World Vision's largest global response to debt. It is a response to food insecurity and malnutrition. How have you seen the global food crisis impacting children and their families? And in your experience, share with us some of the local solutions you have seen contributing to sustaining change. I know that's a lot, but I know there's no one better to take that question than you.
Thank you, Firi, for the question. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in my work with World Vision, I see children experiencing the worst of the global hunger crisis. The speakers who have spoken ahead of me have already presented the harsh numbers. And every day in my work, I see the faces of the children and families behind those figures. World Vision recently released a new global research that is conducted across 18 countries. We found that 85% of forcibly displaced families, who are really among the most affected by hunger crisis. So among those surveyed, 85% are unable to afford food to meet their daily nutritional needs. But this crisis is not just about hunger. It has a ripple effect, and I know the speakers before me have spoken to this. We have seen that in education, 30% of households that were surveyed, they have a child out of school. I witnessed this situation not so long ago when I visited Bay Regional Hospital in Baidoa in Somalia. While there, I met with a lady known as Abdio. Abdio is 34 years old, and she's a mother to 7 children. At the time of my visit, 2 of her twins that are 8 months old had recently been admitted into the intensive care unit, and they were suffering from severe acute malnutrition. Usually, an 8-month-old baby would be crawling, sitting by themselves, even walking. But if you saw these twins, they looked like barely just a few weeks old. They were so fragile, thin, and looking so delicate that you would be afraid to even hold them. But this situation was not only affecting those twins. Abdio's 12-year-old son was at the time missing school so that he could help his mother to take care of these babies in hospital. And her husband was back home caring for their 4 other children and hence not able to earn anything to support the family. This situation, unfortunately, is not a lone case. Surrounding Abdio at that time of the visit were dozens of other mothers with equally sick children. So my meeting with Abdio and her son reinforced to me the urgency of finding solutions or scaling up interventions that we know work well and sustainably. And in the last 12 months, leading World Vision's Global Hunger Response, I have seen great interventions that World Vision is implementing to fight hunger alongside communities. An example in Uganda is where World Vision is working together with the World Food Programme and the Ugandan Prime Minister's Office to improve refugees' food security, to ensure they have access to a meal. In this community, we introduced block farming, and this is an approach that opens new land for agriculture. And this is in the largest refugee settlement there, named Bidibidi. The project is supporting both
I do apologize for that technical glitch. We seem to have lost Mary out of Nairobi as she was wrapping up and giving us examples from Bidibidi in Uganda.
Do you hear me, Phil?
I think we have her back, or we'll try to dial her. Hi, Mary. This is Thompson in Geneva. Can you hear us?
Hello, Firi.
Yes, please go ahead.
Hello.
Yes, Mary, we lost you when you were telling us about Bidibidi. Take it away, please.
Yeah, thank you so much. So when I spoke to one of the women who had participated in that project, her name is Joyce. What she says was, I vividly recall when my children spent days without food. I could not bear the sight. I always wished to grow my food and take charge of how and when my family eats. And this piece of land is doing exactly that. So for Joyce, this was a solution that works. Elsewhere in Myanmar, where World Vision is supporting families start small-scale businesses income generating opportunities. Here, families that are targeted are supported with training, first on personal finance training, and then life skills, counseling, and caregiver education. And one of the families that received this package is a man called Ted, who also testifies that because of this support that is complementary.
She's battling through technical challenges there. We'll give you another minute and see if she can come back online. Is she back?
I don't know what's happening.
No, don't worry. Don't worry. Go right ahead.
All right. So I was talking of Ted's family that also received a complementary support. And from him right now, his family is able, they are keeping, right now they are growing mushrooms, they are raising chicken, and from this they are able to get food for their own household as well as for sale. And not only that, from the income source, he is now able to participate in a saving group. And what we learn from these examples that I have shared here is that if we are to respond to the food crisis at the local level and at global scale, whatever interventions we do must be sustainable, and they must consider needs of a family as a whole, as well as address the needs of the particular family members through an inclusive, multi-sectoral approach. And they must build in income generating opportunities that ultimately allow people to start on their own. These solutions have a complexity to them that will require flexible, multi-year and multi-sectoral funding and participatory approaches developed hand in hand with communities. Thank you. Back to you, Tom.
Thank you so much, and thank you so much for powering your way through despite the technical glitches. Back to the room, I just want to bring in Sofia Butak from Ukraine Rural Women's Business Network. Sofia, if you can just talk us through your first-hand experiences operating in food insecure areas of Ukraine, particularly through a gender lens.
Thank you very much, and thank you for hosting here and listening and participating. I hope that my visit will be not just jumping in, but as well leaving some thoughts and some ideas for all the organizations here and all the participants online. I'm Sofia Burtak. I'm representing here Rural Women Business Network, and we are working from the field. I am the consultant. I am the one wearing the bulletproof vest, wearing the helmet, and going directly to the villages in the front lines and working with women, advising on agriculture, on creating the cooperatives. So the field work is my everyday work. Today, this look is very unique for the last of 1.5 years. I will say that rural areas are very affected by the war. At the beginning of the war, everybody thought that fleeing from the big cities to the rural areas would be very safe, but it was not. It was the big mistake, because rural areas become the most vulnerable from the security point of view, as well from the having enough food, having the food banks in the villages. Even though the villages are producing the food, there is a little capacity to store, preserve, and deliver if there is a need to the country versus to the bigger cities. I would say there is still a little information coming from rural areas to the international and even national level due to the crisis, as remote and less connected villages are not pretty well researched. I would say in the name of the organization, which I am president, and I'm trying to develop as much as possible and take all my forces into this work, that rural women face military impact in destroyed soil. Very recently, it was counted that 8 million of hectares of fields are mined, and 6 million of hectares of those lands are still occupied by Russian Federation soldiers. And this impact is very amazing and very unique because mines, hazarded and destroyed land from the airstrikes is losing its fertility. This impacts men and women at the same time, producers who want to cultivate the land, but it's very threatening their personal safety as well. Climate change, geological changes are very dramatic from the rockets, from the constant shelling. But unique is that rural women in Ukraine, in the face of war, become one to hold all the family, to take care about all the issues of the family, host the people who were displaced, cooking, accommodating, volunteering to cook the food, and moreover, to take over the production on the farms. And from this point of view, if the man goes to the military service, she has to take all the work done by men as well on her shoulders. And this is very demanding, to have the knowledge on supply and production technology, to have the knowledge and capacity to market and manage the finances. So the safety and quality of food is so actual as never before, and it lies on her shoulders. So from this point of view, we have seen, as a business association of rural women, great demand in knowledge and networking. We were very doubting at the middle of the summer 2022 that it will be the demand for some trainings in the conditions of direct threat to be killed, blackouts, and rapid growth of the inputs prices, let's say, that women will be willing to go to the training. It was something unbelievable for us even. But after half of year of war, we had 300 participants of consultations, and food safety and certification of the different kind of levels, even European standards, was the toppest topic to receive the training, to receive the consultations. And thanks to the Women and Peace Humanitarian Fund, we had the possibility to deliver this knowledge to women. And it's still demanded. And we were amazed how fast the small household, the small and medium business transforms. And women are very, very open to the new technologies, new modern way, how to make the households into the business, how to make them be earning for the needs of the families, and develop even and diversify the new businesses. We had as well experience to deliver to 1,200 small households, even displaced from the Kherson to Mykolaiv region, the south of Ukraine, equipment sets to grow the vegetables. Thanks to Oxfam partners, we had the great results that people who knows how to grow the vegetables in very south in Kherson region, who came to the Mykolaiv region where was no culture of the vegetable growing, become, making the new shifts to the communities. And they brought a lot of experience and they shared this experience. So we are now working hard on making the greenhouse complex with Oxfam and making the cooperative to be absorbing and making this peace building at the community level, because it's not only about the resources for displaced people, but as well how to combine the experience from the displaced people coming and local people absorbing all of that and making this community to be integrated. And as well, we had a tremendous experience of farmers fleeing from the military lines, but trying to do their business in some other region. And thanks to our partners of Canadian government and Sokodevi, we had a possibility to displace the business of the producers coming from the east to the west of Ukraine and establish 5 greenhouses, support the cooperatives again. And this was very unique because if you are a farmer, if you are a producer, it's not that you pack your backpack and go somewhere else. It's that you are very tied to the land. Under our researches, 60% of the rural women, even in the biggest, toppest military activities, were not moving anywhere. They are very tied to their land, and safety and security and peace, which was already mentioned today, is very essential to produce, to be farmer, and to fight the hunger, to deliver the food to other people. We as well helped to establish women-led local rural organization, and due to UN Women's support, we had the great possibility establishing rural centers of the social services and as well entrepreneurship services. Again, we were very surprised that during the war, everything is happening in the conditions when sometimes you even don't have the basic infrastructure, but the will to help the other women, to support each other, to network and to develop their livelihoods is very strong. And this is the dignity. So my message today about, and I'm very up to what Ms. Rina Gelani said, that women-led organizations can bring other perspective and keep doing, even in very, very unique, threatening conditions, amazing things, like keeping the livelihood and humanitarian, going to the business support, even in these conditions, can be about the dignity of people. Rural Women Business Network will keep teaching modern and energy-efficient technologies, because we know how to live without the energy at all. This is as actual as never, and energy cooperatives will be our next challenge and next step. We will deliver the machinery operation skills and different kind of skills to women, which they didn't do before. They have to drive the tractors now, they have to operate machinery, which male part was doing, now they have to learn. And gender lenses now are very practical in agriculture as never. And we will institutionalize, especially marketing opportunities through the producers' cooperatives. It's not only about the scaling the business of women into the institution as cooperative, but as well it's about the local processing, local food security, and as well delivering to international markets. We are very keen as Ukrainians, which now have so much damage done by the Russian Federation. We are very keen in feeding the world and produce, but we need to fight first for our land, and we need to save our land and people from this damage. And I suppose this aggression against the world security can teach us a lot about the dignity, about the need of security together with economical development. Thank you.
Thank you so much for that, Ms. Putak. Really, thank you so much for that. Nadine, what are the challenges that vulnerable people, vulnerable groups in Lebanon face from a food security and livelihoods point of view? What are you hearing from the communities there?
Hello. So let's just admit it's going to be difficult to speak after all those wonderful speakers and to talk back about Lebanon. Lebanon has been always, action, and now we're having a new crisis, which is the food security. So 12 years into the onset of the Syrian crisis, all communities in Lebanon continue to face a dire situation amidst a steadily deteriorating and complex socio-economic and political crisis. It's compounded by the effects of the COVID-19 pandemic, by the Beirut port explosion, and lately as well by the cholera outbreak. Lebanon's unprecedented financial and economic crisis has been ranked by the World Bank as one of the most severe crises since the mid-19th century. It has hollowed public provision of key basic services for all populations, including water, electricity, transport, health, education, and social protection. Pre-existing inequalities and systemic failures have been further exacerbated by the current crisis and are currently major drivers of tensions within and between communities over competition for scarce resources and access to essential services. The fluctuation and continuous depreciation of the local currency since October 2019 has translated into high levels of inflation, with the year-on-year inflation rate reaching 122% in December 2022. This has had an impact on the price of goods and services in the country and has limited the purchasing power of individuals. So thus the impact on food security. In terms of the VASIR, which is the Vulnerability Assessment for Syrian Refugees, it has been found that in 2022, 34% of Syrian refugee households were considered food secure. So a total of 67% were either moderately, severely food insecure or less. We have at the moment a little bit more than 2 million of people that are facing some sort of food insecurity. So this is a crisis that we don't need. This is a crisis that the world won't need, and this is a call for action to remedy, to start working on the crisis before it exacerbates and we get another hot potato on our hands. So what has been done? Yes, we're having food baskets, we're having delivery of food baskets, we're having some distribution of nutritionally balanced meals, we're having cash, we're having vouchers. But ultimately, this is not the solution. The solution is really linking food security, livelihoods in Lebanon. Lebanon is endowed with good resources to avoid a food security crisis. We have agricultural land, we have water sources, we have labor. So why aren't we doing this? It's because we need to link back the humanitarian with the development. We need to work hand in hand to ensure that we're looking into the productive sectors in Lebanon, we're looking into agricultural support, we're looking into ways of pushing more people into production. This is where we're lacking. This is where the nexus that we've been all talking about here in Brussels, in New York, in all the places where we go to conferences, this is where we need it. We need it on the ground. We need to start getting out of this. This is a humanitarian portfolio. This is a development portfolio. This is really a call for action on this. Second point is, we've seen in the video, people do not want to be given food. People want to produce. They want to have the choice. They want to live in dignity, as has been said. So the aim here is to respond to that. The aim here is to look into a multi-sectoral approach to provide choice, to provide dignity, to provide equity. We need to focus a bit more on food waste, on food safety, how to teach people how to be looking into food waste and food security. We need to think more about the unsustainable use of water resources, because as we all know, in Lebanon, the largest consumer of water is agriculture, because we don't have the best practices in the field. So at this point, when we say really look into the nexus, we're asking for tangible action. We're asking for support in terms of energy. We're asking for support in terms of sustainable use of water. We're asking for support in terms of pushing more women-led organization into agricultural development, into agribusiness, into food production, so that they can sustain themselves rather than us giving them every time. When we as an organization came to food security, it was because of COVID-19. It was because the women that we deal with were telling us that they are incapable of getting their needs met. And this is how we started with the food baskets. Then, with the port explosion in Beirut, we had to install a community kitchen in Beirut to provide hot meals, because we've heard from the women that even if they were given the food basket, they did not have the equipment, because it was blown in the explosion, to cook food. So they were relying more on cold meats and cold meals. So at the moment, when I look back and say, we should not have in Lebanon a food security crisis, we should not have in Lebanon child food poverty, because we can do it. We can reverse this, but we need your support to do that. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Nadine. So much has been said by the panelists. What shall we take home? Well, our colleagues at Concern have just exactly what we need. They've organized a video for us, again from the field, and it includes asks for decision makers and member states. Let's go.
Multiplier, côté que de faire des activités qui te aider jeunes plus influencer des gangs armés côté que te mettre activités sous pied pour jeunes récréer côté que les jeunes chita dans quartier pour préparer un arme ya porter balle pousser un livre pousser un carré pour le carré pour 2000 ka venir série dans société.
Moi pense l'État bon si jeune t'a mobilisé en façon que pour demander un changement dans la vie meilleure pour nous en Haïti.
waxaan jeclaan lahaa in Soomaaliya isbeddel looga sameeyo xagga amniga xagga abaaraha in laga caawiyo dadka masaakiinta xagga shaqada xagga dhismaha Soomaaliya oo dhan.
Somalia is a wonderful country, but peace is the main thing that is disturbing us here in Mogadishu, generally in Somalia. So if by any chance they can manage to bring peace back in Somalia, it will be so grateful. So us, we can think higher than the situation we are in now.
Leo mweleze mrekomari gatafanya cha kwanza ni kuleta security. Security kisha kuya vajana watakuwa encadre. Njala itakuwa makazi itakuwa juu kila mtu atajia kwao wafano tena mavilaji balime sambele. Detrua batoto watasoma mkondisio ya B. Juu kifanya barasa watoto hapo msi wako nasoma na watoto wako na kawezo kidogo.
Juu tukapata amani sie hapa Mkongo, hakuna kinapaswa shindikana. Batoto wetu watasoma, masomo inaendelea, tunachuruza, uchuruzi yetu unaendelea. Tunapaswa fanya kila kitu kinye kinawezekana, vitu vinaendeka bila shida.
A very moving video. Nothing kills more than hunger. If anyone asks what are the most impacted people, and the community is telling us, you have it all from Haiti, from DRC, from Somalia, from Burkina, from Ukraine, from Lebanon. It's all there. Now, as we come to a close, Excellency, Ambassador Vincenzo Grassi, Permanent Representative of Italy to the United Nations Office here in Geneva, will provide the concluding remarks.
So, thank you. First of all, let me thank personally and on behalf of the audience our moderator for his dynamic and professional way of leading our discussion. So, allow me also to thank the FAO, the World Food Programme, the government of Kenya and the United States, together with the other co-sponsors and people from the ground, for this kind invitation to discuss priority issues in today's humanitarian emergencies. So, distinguished panelists, dear colleagues, ladies and gentlemen, we have heard from all previous speakers how dire the global food crisis is. Its magnitude is going to be without precedent in history, and we have collectively endorsed the responsibility to change things. After so many outstanding interventions, allow me to frame some key elements we all should take fully into account. According to latest UN data, over 250 million people in 58 countries in the world are acutely food insecure, and they require urgent food assistance. The number of those in need is continuously growing year after year. The drivers of food insecurity, including conflict, adverse effects of climate change, natural hazards, economic shocks, are still there, and they will not disappear. Sudan, Haiti, Horn of Africa, Syria are just few examples that are regularly brought to the table. The humanitarian architecture is overwhelmed by the impact of converging crises that are driving humanitarian needs globally and increasing them exponentially, whilst the growth in funding for critical life-saving humanitarian assistance is not keeping pace. We have heard how UN agencies and local partners are forced to cut food rations for lack of funding or because of the increased operational costs. Cutting on food and nutrition has a very simple and straight, evident consequences. It has a life-threatening effect for real. This is why food security is a priority for my country, as it is for all the people and the organization participating in this side event. This is why from 24 to 26 of July in Rome, Italy will host the second UN Food System Summit +2, the so-called stock-taking moment that confirms our capital as the global capital of food security, an issue that will be prominent also during the Italian G7 presidency next year. Many speakers highlighted today how addressing the scale and magnitude of this global food crisis will undoubtedly require us to collectively invest in prevention, response, and resilience. Responding to immediate emergency food need is not enough anymore. We must do it while helping to build resilient and productive food systems, involving all actors on the ground, including development ones, as well as affected communities. Localization is a strong asset in the food sector, and it empowers people that should always be at the center of every humanitarian planning, solution, and action. Let me also remind you how many times today the role of women has been pointed out as agents of change, providers of solutions, and among the most effective implementers of assistance programs. They are a powerful tool for getting things better, and we should remove obstacles they still face to enable prosperity in many regions of the world. From our point of view, prevention and investment in anticipatory action is essential to curb the global food insecurity trends. We need to continue acting up and speaking out against famine and food insecurity. Driving attention is not enough. We must remain vigilant, and have all hands on deck, keeping the international system informed, engaged, and proactive. Early warning mechanisms need to trigger timely action and the necessary funding to be activated. We must also monitor that starvation is not used as a method of warfare, upholding the relevant international humanitarian law principles and asking for access to all people in need of food assistance without discriminations. Support political solutions, peace, and facilitate humanitarian diplomacy to improve access and mitigate war-induced famine must be a common effort of the international community. Recurrent problems need also innovative solutions. Technology and artificial intelligence in partnership with academia and the private sector can serve the purpose of getting more efficient and effective responses to complex crises. But we also urgently need to enlarge the donor base. And being more inclusive of all development actors and the private sector that can play a positive role in making strategic, anticipatory, and flexible financing instruments available, and this the burden of the global humanitarian envelope. The over 250 million people in need our help. We owe it to them and we must redouble our efforts to end this unspeakable crisis and to prevent any further global food insecurity. Thank you all for participating to this event, which is very important to us.
Thank you so much. Grazie mille, Excellency. And thank you so much to all the panelists. But before you go, Mary, are you still online? I hope Mary is still online and all my panelists are here, but I'm going to turn to the floor now just to see if there are any questions or statements, and I'm being told that there are a few that are available. And I'll start first with Ms. Carol Bellamy from the Rockefeller Foundation and former UNICEF Executive Director. Over to you, ma'am.
Thank you very much. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, thank you for letting me have this opportunity to share some thoughts, and let me join others in thanking the panelists and participants and sponsors for a very interesting session this afternoon. Late last year, I had the privilege of chairing a convening group under the auspices of the Rockefeller Foundation on leveraging humanitarian funding to create more sustainable food systems. The resulting report, Anticipate and Localize, words we've heard many times today, published in April, calls on donors to keep the many promises that they've already made on food security over the years. Because if they don't, there will be as many hungry people in 2030 as there were in 2015, when the world pledged to end hunger once and for all. Let me illustrate. The figures on nutrition, or the lack of such figures, are alarming. In 2020, 45 million children under the age of 5 were suffering from wasting, the most deadly form of malnutrition, which increases their risk of death by up to 12 times. And the growth and development of 149 million children was stunted by the chronic lack of essential nutrients in their food. At the top of the scale, more than 3 billion people could not afford a healthy diet in 2020, up from 112 million in 2019. Sadly, we are seeing the erosion of decades of promise on food security and a continued failure to build food systems that are sustainable and resilient. Again, words that we've heard many times today. The current global food crisis has roots that lie deep in the fault lines of humanitarian food assistance and global food systems, fault lines that were there long before the COVID-19 pandemic or the conflict in Ukraine. The fact is that humanitarian food assistance is not keeping up with demand. And that is partly because not enough funding is spent on building food security that is truly resilient and sustainable. The end result is that while food saves lives, it doesn't necessarily change lives. The good news is that there are solutions out there that can be taken to scale. The report I mentioned suggests 4 ways to tackle the challenge. It's not limited, but 4 ways I put before you. First, fund anticipation. Let's get ahead of the curve and plan for disasters before they hit, saving more lives and even saving money in the process. I urge humanitarian donors to spend 1% of their 2024 budget on anticipatory action and increase that share by 1% for the next 10 years. This is eminently doable. Germany has promised to allocate 5% of its humanitarian funding to anticipatory action. Ireland has said that it allocates 25% of its humanitarian budget to support such action. Save the Children has pledged to use 15% of its internal flexible funding for anticipatory approaches by 2024, while FAO has pledged at least 20% of its emergency funding for anticipatory action by 2025. That's all great, but more, please. Donors, I hope you are listening. Second, fund localization. I urge all donors to increase their share of the share of their funding that goes to local actors to 25% of their total expenditures over the next 5 years. My own country, the United States, has pledged to spend half of its aid on programs that have local communities in the driving seat. We need more countries to follow that example. Third, we need to join the dots. Again, something we heard. I urge UN country teams to establish and resource humanitarian development and peace nexus teams to find linkages across their work and signal future needs and trends, again, staying ahead of the curve. And finally, let's make the investment case. Show what works by testing solutions through a concerted campaign to implement best practices on funding in a real-time situation of food insecurity. And let's back it up with a dedicated team and a toolkit of proven approaches. If anyone would like to know more about these proposals or has suggestions for ways to move them forward, I would be delighted to discuss them in greater detail. Again, I thank you very much for giving me the opportunity to share my thoughts.
Thank you so much, ma'am, for that. I'll quickly move to Ambassador of Timor-Leste, Excellency Maria de Lud Bessa, to take the floor.
Thank you so much for this opportunity. I'll try to be very brief, but I would like us actually to share a statement on behalf of my delegation from Timor-Leste. Currently, over 60% of Timor-Leste's population relies on agriculture production for their livelihoods. However, we are facing tremendous challenges due to the impact of climate change, such as natural disasters and extreme weather dependence on imports and limited financial and technical capacity to implement climate-resilient agriculture practices, adapt new technologies, and build adaptive capacity. This is further exacerbated by infrastructural and logistic limitations affecting food availability and accessibility. Unfortunately, these compounded challenges have resulted in 300,000 individuals, or 22% of Timor-Leste's population, facing high levels of acute food insecurity, as recently reported by the IPC in February 2023. Timor-Leste, although is committed to improving food security, reducing rural poverty, supporting the transition from subsistence farming to commercial farming of crops, livestock and fisheries, and promoting environmental sustainability and the conservation of Timor-Leste's natural resources. To do so, we have developed a national food security strategy that encompasses various measures, including investment in agriculture, support for smallholder farmers, improving infrastructure, and promoting diversification and resilience. Moreover, and in line with my country's commitment to achieve SDG 2 on zero hunger, the Council of Ministers approved in 2020 This multi-stakeholder national action plan will help Timor-Leste make best use of its available resources, identify gaps for government and development partners to fill, and advocate for increased investments. Small islands, development states, and least developing countries like Timor-Leste require support to be able to fully implement domestic programs and achieve food security. Comprehensive support that integrates climate adaptation, sustainable agriculture, infrastructure development, and international cooperation is of primordial importance. Specifically, in the context of my country, Timor-Leste, we need assistance in promoting climate resilience, agriculture practices tailored to our unique conditions, investment in infrastructure, capacity building, knowledge transfer, improved market access, and international support and financing. To tackle food crisis, some strategies can be adopted, such as investing in the potential that a certain country has to reach sustainability, provide local actors with the access to funding and decision-making, and promote early intervention, which can reduce food gaps and protect assets in livelihoods at a very lower cost. The national food crisis and the global food crisis are interconnected challenges that mutually influence and exacerbate one another. Therefore, and just to conclude, I wish to stress that addressing the global food crisis requires both national and international efforts, as solutions at the local level contribute to global resilience, while coordinated global action helps mitigate the impact of national crisis and ensures a sustainable and equitable food system for all. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Excellency, for that. Moving right ahead, I would like to call upon Mr. Robert Koroma, First Secretary at Sierra Leone. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much, Mr. Chairman, Coordinator. You've been very, very, very active, and we enjoyed the session. And thank you, the organizers, for at least bringing the issue of food insecurity to the spotlight. Sierra Leone thanks the organizers of this important side event that seeks to call the attention of the international community to the realities of global food crisis. Sierra Leone believes that food crisis, as the reports and statistics indicate, is becoming a looming threat to the survival of humanity as is known today. The danger is the numbers are rising increasingly. Global crisis is a reality that has been sustained over the years by known factors. Climate change has become the major challenge to food production, especially in developing countries like Sierra Leone. The constant recurrence of cyclones and flooding in coastline countries, earthquakes, and extreme weather conditions are factors affecting food production and other agricultural activities. Armed conflicts, insecurity, and displacement continue to exacerbate an already worsening situation, especially when agriculturally viable regions are affected. And recently, the outbreak of the COVID-19 pandemic and the global economic shock that followed continued to disrupt food production and other agricultural activities. These factors combined present a looming catastrophe that will lead us to a global famine. Sierra Leone depends on subsistence farming for over 70% of its population, but is among the most vulnerable societies to climate change. Sierra Leone is a testimony to the work of humanitarian organizations. We've seen the worst of times, and the only survival line that existed was held by humanitarian organizations. Our 10-year civil war, our recurring experience as internally displaced persons from seasonal floodings and landslides have given us the local standard to declare that nothing thrives in a conflict situation. Our continued cooperation with these organizations has become the drive to our successful free education program, as with the introduction of the school feeding program, which has brought a swelling in school attendance. We join other organizations to call for immediate action to reverse the current hunger and food crisis situation. We refer to the aspirations articulated in the Sustainable Development Goals and the commitment of the global community to the achievement of the same. We call for the cessation of hostilities in conflict situations to allow for productive societies to thrive. We call for increase in funding to humanitarian organizations to help curtail the increasing spate in global food crisis. We call for support in agricultural goods and technology to food-producing regions and individual countries to help communities to produce the food they eat. I thank you.
Thank you so much, Mr. Koroma. Moving again swiftly ahead, can I call upon Miss Alice Byler, Police Coordinator for the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center.
Yes, dear moderator, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes. Excellency, distinguished speakers and participants, I deliver this statement on behalf of the Internal Displacement Monitoring Center, IDMC. Last month, IDMC released its annual global report on internal displacement with a focus on the complex relationship between internal displacement and food insecurity. I take the opportunity to thank the lead organizers and co-sponsors of this event for their valuable contribution to the report. 2022 was again a record year, with 71 million people across the world living in displacement within their countries because they were forced to leave their homes because of conflict and disasters. Our report shows a visible overlap between the countries hosting the highest number of IDPs and countries currently facing crisis level of food insecurity. Within these countries, IDPs are a particularly vulnerable group, as it has been highlighted previously by several panelists and in the videos that we have seen during this event. Food insecurity adds to the fragility of IDPs and increases their protection needs. IDPs tend to lower their food intake as a result of their displacement. Internally displaced children face also higher level of malnutrition. An elderly person may be left out of nutritional support and food distribution programs. But many data gaps persist and limit our understanding of how IDPs are affected by food insecurity. It limits our ability to inform tailored programming, key to prevent and respond to food insecurity in displacement situations effectively. Our call to action is threefold. First, support IDPs via cash assistance and social protection. Unconditional cash assistance is particularly useful for IDPs, given that their needs and priorities change as a result of leaving their homes and livelihoods behind. Food may become one of their most pressing needs, and having the means to buy it may reduce their risk of becoming food insecure and help them to recover. These short-term solutions should be bridged with longer-term social protection measures led by governments and their development partners. Second, support livelihoods and skills development for IDPs' self-reliance. IDPs should be instrumental to their own solutions. Humanitarian assistance should continue to focus on the immediate and urgent needs of IDPs to alleviate their plight and reduce risk of repeated or protracted displacement. But IDP meaningful participation in shaping the achievement of durable solutions should also be supported early on. Long-term solutions to address food insecurity and displacement must make use of IDPs' knowledge and capacities to establish or rebuild their chosen livelihoods. It's important to leverage the skills they have as farmers, laborers, vendors, or entrepreneurs, and their potential to contribute to rebuilding and maintaining food systems and positively shaping food security outcomes. Third and last, fill data gaps. Many food security assessments do not disaggregate data by displacement status, limiting our understanding of how IDPs may be unevenly affected by food insecurity. The lack of disaggregated and longitudinal data also limits our understanding of how displacement affects broader food systems. Filling this gap is complex and requires stakeholders working on food security and displacement to collaborate and consider the relationship between the two phenomena as an integral part of their data collection efforts. There may be significant financial, logistical, and methodological obstacles, but ensuring the inclusion of millions of IDPs who may be suffering disproportionately from food insecurity should be considered as a priority. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you so much, Ms. Alice Baila from IDMC. We're going to take the last set of quick, short and brief statements from our colleagues from Switzerland, the Democratic Republic of the Congo. I see Switzerland's flag there, Concern, as well as Intersource in that order.
Thank you very much. I will be short, very short, despite I have a long list of bullet points, but I will concentrate maybe on three messages that are actually timed. So one is like on the short term, that's I encourage everyone to do more in terms of resources. We try to have more quality funding, and the midterm kind of view would be just to do things a bit differently and embrace the nexus approaches, as we heard several times in this room today, but also outside of this room, but through locally led initiative, where the long-term view is in every short-term action. So in this particular case, I would like to stress the importance of the protection and accountabilities to the population to ensure the do not harm and to remember the international humanitarian law, and the importance of the anticipatory actions that has been repeated several times during this side event, as well as against climate shocks. And of course, the importance of cash-based transfer and in order to be more efficient. In the long term, we just need to transform the system, which is a piece of cake, of course. But we are already talking about this transition, and the Food Summit was already leading the way on many key messages. I'm happy that Italy announced a second version. And in this long term, we need to also include the inclusive approach, the innovation part, and the policy dialogue that are the basis for continuing the transformation. Finally, the budget cuts that we are all facing should be considered as missed opportunity against greater future threats that trigger an unhealthy competition between organizations. It's important to keep reforming the system and stay engaged. Thank you very much.
Thank you. DRC? Pas français. Merci.
Oui, je vous remercie pour cette réunion. Je vous remercie pour cette réunion parallèle que vous avez convoquée. Et par rapport à la sécurité alimentaire, mon pays, je pense qu'il est en train de faire un grand effort pour résoudre ces problèmes dans notre pays. Vous savez que la population congolaise a tant souffert par rapport à la guerre qui lui a été imposée injustement. Et dans ce secteur, il y a vraiment l'insécurité alimentaire qui est en train d'être organisée dans ce point. Mais mon pays, mon gouvernement est en train de fournir un grand effort pour s'en sortir de cette situation. Et nous demandons aussi à la communauté internationale de nous appuyer pour que cette population qui a tant souffert par la guerre puisse sortir de cette situation. Je vous remercie.
I do apologize, we do not have interpretation for this. But however, I do have my team that is trying to transcribe into English, and then I'll just say it out at the end. Can I turn to Concern and Intersource very quickly?
Thank you very much. And of course, agree with the sentiments expressed that conflict continues to be one of the main drivers of food insecurity worldwide, and an end to conflict would be a meaningful step in the right direction, as difficult as it is to achieve. So thank you very much to the organisers, to the excellent panellists, to our lively moderator, and also very much for showing the video from Concern of young people in the Democratic Republic of the Congo, Haiti and Somalia. And they told us very clearly what they need in order to overcome food insecurity. Safety, education, employment, recreational spaces, reconstruction of their countries, and durable solutions to displacement, for a start. Underpinning this must be meaningful efforts to reduce conflict, climate change, and the effects of extreme weather. They spoke of the role of young people in organising for change and the need for inspiring leadership that offers hope and an alternative to violence. Short-term humanitarian assistance is necessary to save lives, but it must be coupled with longer-term community-led programmes to achieve sustainable change. And while identifying the solutions is easy, achieving them is not so easy. There is a role for every stakeholder. That's why we're all here. And we welcome this event's recognition that the role of communities is and must be central. We've heard good examples of how that works today. In Port-au-Prince, young people are working to address the root causes of food insecurity by building peace, strengthening youth leadership, and engaging with armed actors to raise their awareness of protection issues. Sakala and Lakulape are local NGOs supported by Concern that implement this UN peacebuilding funded programme. Concern recently released research on our website about the impact of conflict on food systems in Haiti, Somalia and Sudan. Every context is different and requires different solutions. In Haiti, for example, we identified several issues to address, among them the poor nutritional quality of the available food, the protection risks for women who play a central role in the food system, the negative impact of humanitarian assistance on social cohesion when it is not sufficiently participative and accountable to communities, and the impact of attacks on food sources and restrictions on the movement of food and traders. Programming in Haiti should be designed in a way that addresses these problems, not least among them the need for stability and peace. As Gloria in the video said, if there is peace, anything will be possible. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Chair, for giving me the floor, and thank you to all the panelists for really brilliant presentations. Allow me to highlight food insecurity problems that are often overlooked, those faced by thousands of asylum seekers, refugees, migrants, and undocumented people in Europe, many of whom may have previously been assisted in many protracted crises, some of them mentioned today. A recently conducted research by Intersos Greece revealed some striking findings. So instead of integration into society, thousands of persons of concern are now struggling with the basic ability to secure food for themselves and their families. Of those we interviewed, over 69% have affirmed not having regular access to food. 55% can access food from 1 to 3 times per week, and almost 70% stated that they do not have access to food at all. So despite their rights to access employment, health, education, and other services, even refugees face major challenges. Once they achieve their refugee status, they're entitled to only 30 additional days of state-provided social assistance. After this time, they're on their own, facing multiple administrative and legal barriers to social benefits, access to jobs, and access to housing. Those asylum seekers whose asylum is rejected, facing either deportation or detentions, become instantly vulnerable with no support provided. So lack of integration into the social and economic system and the resulting food insecurity create tremendous medical, social, and mental health problems. One negative result is that survival sex for the minimum income to avoid malnutrition becomes quite common. So governments in Europe must not close their eyes to this and must invest resources to support people's integration into their societies, helping them access employment and all basic services, thus avoiding food insecurity. So our report, Being Hungry in Europe, an analysis of the food insecurity experienced by refugees, asylum seekers, migrants, and undocumented people in Greece, is available on our website. Thank you.
Thank you so much. On that note, we are 5 minutes over time, and I will not take much longer. Just to thank you, everybody. Thank all the guys that are online, including Mary, who is back up on the big screen, for joining us from Nairobi. To thank the panelists, Veronica, Nadine, Sophia, Excellency, always a pleasure to have you. Marcia, who is not in the room at this present moment. I think I'm allowed to use this, am I? There we go. Thank you so much. All the very best. Travel safe.
Well done. Was it all right? I always stumble over my words.
You're perfect fine, and also what you wrote about it is perfect.
What?
What you said was
Okay,
perfect.
good.
Yeah.
Good. I didn't actually get even any approval from my organization.
Huh?
I said I sent it around and I asked them to sign off and they didn't, so I just assumed that it's fine.
I just do my own and I didn't even tell them, and I just afterwards said, this is what I said. Well, for certain things.
I don't know if my CEO dropped off now or not.
Let me just send a pic. I
And I'll
took
send
it
you
to.
some.
Okay.
I need to see myself.
Me too, but we have to do it. Select. I send you.
I'm sending you
all.
6.
Oh, lovely.
Just edit that out.
Same here.
Thank you, sweetheart.
Oh, thank you. And thank you for you did all the groundwork. I did nothing.
It's great that you have the chance to speak.
Yeah, I'm very happy.
And everybody stayed for you.
Yeah. And I love the moderator, I must say, he was brilliant.
Yeah, he's great.
So, I have to run. I have a meeting at 4.
Oh, yeah, my hair. It's so funny.
Oh,
because
you were
Dervina's hair is behind me, so it looks like I have like extra
Lots of
voluminous hair.
Especially for the occasion.
I got my extensions done.
Yes.
Hello.
If it relates to you,
It relates to Dervina. I was just here having a minor breakdown. Dervina. So speak to you there.
Sit down.
Drop me a line and we'll have a drink. Yeah, definitely. Good luck with the rest of the week.
No, thank you so much.
Tomorrow, I'd say. Are you going to be at the
No, Brussels, but I'll be on Friday.
Oh, yeah,
Are
Teresa
you coming
Friday.
for Friday?
Yes.
Also, you're coming in for Friday for the interview?
I'll be here. Yeah,
So I'll
I'll
see you
be
on
here.
Friday.
Oh,
And then, you know, Fed on Friday.
I'll have the fact on Friday, more importantly.
Exactly. Well, good day.
Safe travels.
Sebastian, can you take a photo of Sophia and I?
Of course.
I'll have to send it to my FAO.
Do you want to do it in front of the banner?
No, this is fine. Nothing formal. You come in here. Okay.
Great. That's awesome.
Thank you so much. Oh, that's so beautiful. They have the best baked goods, honestly. Like chocolate, she's the best chocolate I've ever had. Like, don't say this.
I know, yeah.
Well, yeah, this is the new one. So I really like the support. Yes, ma'am. I have Ukrainian cookies. We're spoiled by our panelists. Thank you.
Of course, of course.
Will it be somewhere? Thank you.
And are you done for today, or you still got a bunch of meetings to go through?
I suppose. I hope I'm done. I
Okay.
didn't see it.
Oh, okay.
So we have a